Hello and welcome to Wait, It Gets Better, the improvisational storytelling podcast, where every week a few friends get together with their randomly assigned story elements. We combine them together in order to make a story that you can listen to again and again. I'm, of course, Levi.
I'm Reed.
And I'm Seth.
And we are here to tell you a story. This is episode 3 of the story of Wilbur and John Doe, right? Those are our two kind of mainish characters. There's the quartet members, right? Tess, Rocco, Albert, the cop, the kind of higher level cop, and the battered woman shelter owner, right? You got Slade, the trafficker, who's kind of doing some stuff. They're investigating him. You have our John Doe, who can write like these crazy things. He's from a different dimension. He like doesn't remember his past. You have Wilbur, who years ago wrote a book about how to like organize business and how to like make things work the most efficient way, and how everyone kind of orders their lives around that. The economic system where people, it's a social credit system, so people are put into groups, whether they be like the most wanted, the second most wanted, or the kind of riffraff in between. There's some. We still haven't determined what big thing is going to go down, though, and that's what we're here to determine today. What story element did you have, Reed?
Wild card.
Okay, I had unique artifact. What did you have, Seth?
History.
All right. I think you should go first.
All right. So for the history, I'm going to go back to basically the time of William Wilbur. He is the guy that wrote this book.
Right.
Try not to go into too much detail, but it's basically used as like the Bible of this realm. It basically people have gleaned out of it like how to run their life, how to run business, and if you follow it, it works.
Yeah, I think what we determined is that Wilbur was one of those people who can hear like the John Doe character, who can hear the like
I'll
vibrations.
get into that in a second, but
okay.
Another way to look at it too, if people are familiar with the Book of Five Rings by Musashi, I think it is. People use that all the time. It's kind of the same thing where on the surface it's talking about strategy and like if you get in a fight, have the fire to your right of you or like the door here. And so people use it like, okay, if I'm in an interview, I want to stand facing the door, or playing cards, you want to sit on the spot of the table that is, has the exit to your right. And it's like, and then when they do that, they get better cards, they play better. And it's like, wow, okay, that's weird. And so a book about, kind of Zen and strategy is kind of like applied to other means and it works. Kind of that idea. And so it's, that's what he wrote. So back in that time, originally, what you have is he wasn't in business to begin with. He was a kind of a Nikola Tesla kind of figure. He was on the cutting edge of science and discoveries and things that would have been technically thought of to be way beyond his time. However, as far as the history goes, he was kind of condemned as kind of being this kooky, like, wizard kind of guy. And so let's say the populace of the time didn't take him seriously and kind of wrote him off to a home or treatment or whatever it was, and kind of really degraded the work he was doing as being like wizardy, and it could have got him burned at the stake or something. And so he kind of disappeared for a few years after a accident because I think in the first one we had established that he didn't have any kids. However,
that is correct.
What had happened, though, he was married, and as far as the public knew, his wife died in an accident, and then he went off to recovery. And when he came back, his wife had died, and he kind of started living with his brother, and became, the business tycoon that he became. And
that he ended his life as.
He never got remarried, and he was just like a really great uncle figure to like his brother's like nephew. And so he always lived with them, and basically that consumed his life. However, the reality is that the nephew is his kid, but because he kind of came back with this, he basically handed the kid over to his nephew or his brother, so that if anything bad were to happen, the kid would be left out of that. However, then what you have then is when he came back, like he had like everything he did, just it worked. He'd start a manufacturing business, and it would take off, and within 5 years he'd sell it for a massive amount of profits. And then he'd start something else, and he'd start something else. And so then towards the later end of his life, he wrote out, and because then everybody knew him for being this huge business tycoon, he succeeded at everything he did in life, like even if it was cards or horse racing or business, but mostly it was business. And so he wrote down the will of will. It was basically like a biblical proportioned book about how to look for people to hire, how to perform in a job, how to present yourself, how to do this. And it was all like equations of separating value to time and how to assess like all kinds of stuff. And if you follow all these, your business succeeds. And that's kind of where we are today. But again, much like the Bible, a lot of people then interpret like important structures. So they'll read it and be like, well, in the passage where he gives the example of the sheep farmer who has X amount of sheep to X amount of acres and only so many people, and how then he hired 3 more employees and divided so many a loan for this to then compress more product. And what they'll reinterpret, not necessarily reinterpret, but a lot of different understandings of what is meant at this point in time now is derived from that, which has led to, let's say, the full-scale economies adopting, for lack of better terms, to using the same thing like a Baptist or a Presbyterian or a Catholic understanding of I'm not picking out those, but in the same idea where you have the different denominations, different people will denounce importance to different passages and what they think it means. But in truth and reality, it is basically he encoded all of his scientific finding in this book in a way. So again, kind of if someone like understands like an idea of like coding, or if you have the right code, you'll understand like what a text is meaning. And in one case would be like I think it's gematria. So you have a text that will read and give you a story or a statement, but if you have the right numerical code, it'll point out certain letters or certain words that'll add up to different sums. And that's basically what you have. All of his equations, all of his work on time travel, altered dimensions, cloning, faster than light travel, dream recording, out of body experience and travel. Anything you can think of, all these, crazy stuff, telepathy. It's all there, but it's all under this code that he's written out that reads like a business manual. And so everyone has been interpreting it now as, how to run your life. But because it has all the coding of all these other things, it's proportionately lined up to like vibe with the universe, I guess. And it works, but also has all the coding for this other stuff. Now, as far as to get back, and I think we put that in the other things. So sorry, I'll try to jump into new information here. So basically that was his life, and he, so as far as the public knows, he had no kids. But now, as we understand, he did have a kid, and I'm thinking one of our other characters or a couple of our other characters are his like great grandkids.
I'm gonna say Bernard.
Okay, I was thinking the same thing. So I think Bernard is, and then maybe Bernard has like a journal of notes that William would have written to his nephew in like birthday cards and little other stories, which actually hold some of the decoding codes.
Right, which is maybe one of the reasons why he was so interested in some of the stuff that the John Doe was writing and helped him out, because he, at some level, was like, "Oh, I understand this." At some level, even if it was unconscious.
Right. And so I think that is one of the keys then that hold to, let's say, one, why maybe Bernard is so interested in getting what the John Doe has. And so in all of the other things, the other thing that sets this up, and this would then set up where the John Doe would have come from. So in an attempt of time travel, being that he was not accepted in his time, he attempted to time travel to a time that his work was accepted. However, it backfired.
Okay.
And it pulled a version of himself from a place that his work was accepted,
To
aka his actual scientific work, and pulled him to where then his other work was accepted.
Okay.
So ultimately, like, it is him,
just him from a different place.
From a different place, which then fit that parameter. Because when you
Right.
start, like, let's say, jumping into the time fractal and basically putting in the parameters to do that, it basically pulled from what he was wanting to go to where his concepts were accepted. But because he's here, this is his time frame, like, he can't necessarily move from there, and so it basically pulled a version of himself from where it was his ideal location to his own thing, but at the time frame that his work, but his encoded work, was accepted.
So is he still alive or is he dead?
No, he's dead. It's been like a couple hundred years. So he's long dead. The only thing that then would be passed down would then
be those journals.
Would be like the couple journals. And again, it's kind of coded, but again, like a more simple coding that would then give almost like that answer sheet. So if like you start uncoding one, you can start uncoding the rest. And so the journals and things that Bernard would have from like his grandpa are kind of the key to basically unencode the rest of the work. But I think also too, the John Doe guy is dying, I believe, from the first episode.
Yep. He has it's like a degenerative neurological thing where he's like getting more and more unstable as he goes along. So great. Cool. Reed, do you have something for Wildcard, or should I talk about my unique artifact?
Go into unique artifact.
Okay, the unique artifact is the steno notepad that Bernard has and is collecting of the weird random writings of the John Doe. Some of it is musings about where I came from. Some of it is kind of rough drawings of his memories of skylines and stuff, which almost look like the city they live in, but not quite. Some of it is these really complex calculations. Some of it is strings of letters together. All of these are, if we had time to code them in, would be considered combinations, right? That's what we're going to call them. You can call them spells if you want. That's what people used to call this type of thing. But we're going to call them combinations. And now there's locks, and locks need keys or locks need combinations. So if you memorize the right equation, and then you can basically put it up against the right lock, it will do the thing you want it to do, So one time, Bernard had given John Doe helped him start paying for a P.O. box so that he could get some assistance and have an address and stuff like that. And the John Doe had forgotten his he lost his key. And they were at the post office, Bernard and the John Doe, and he was trying to get in, and he was getting agitated, and he just spouted off a string of numbers and then said, Fox, angle, break. And the door just clink, unlocked, right? It was the unique set of combination of numbers and words that were the correct frequency to unlock any door.
That's cool.
Right? And that's contained inside of this steno notepad. Now, the notepad isn't magic at all. It can be burned or broken or ripped apart or stolen. But Bernard, in the last couple of years, has definitely, shall we say, taken advantage of some of the things that he has noticed that the John Doe has been able to do, and has sort of written down some of the things, like cleaning a toilet, cleaning a bathroom. Very easy when you know the right words to cause all of the walls and all the surfaces to clean themselves, These are things that Wilbur was sort of figuring out, and these are things that the John Doe, if his name was Wilbur before, I don't know, but the John Doe, everyone took advantage of where he came from. So that's a unique artifact. And I believe that inside of it is some sort of answer. Rocco will use it at some point. Tess will use it at some point. Albert will never believe that it's real, but at some point in time, it's going to go away, right? At some point in time, it's just like a steno notepad. So at some point in time, it's just going to get beat up so much that it's just going to, like, a page is going to get tore out of it, But right now, all of the words contain power. And Bernard has some of the ideas about what they are. And he's kind of been writing in, like, maybe it does this thing, He hasn't robbed any banks or done anything like that. But, he's seen the John Doe do some weird stuff and has been trying to kind of write down and, like, document it as best he can. And that's what he's doing it with.
I don't want Slade to get a hold of this thing. And now Bernard is on his radar because, he doesn't
Right.
want one of his people has escaped.
Right.
Yeah.
So part of the thing that I'm thinking about with this story is that since everyone follows the Wilbur Bible, the Wilbur lexicon, everyone is kind of locked in to this specific vibration. You can't try something new because everyone's always been trying this. Everyone's always been doing the same thing. It's a rut. It's a very deep rut.
Yeah, which is particularly troublesome for what you have. You have the makings of an exploited class, the
Right.
numbers, the cogs.
Right.
An industrialized society where, so, they have their games and their entertainments and whatnot to, for when they get off work. But
Yeah,
there's
or even the ones who are lower than them who have no recognition at all,
right.
who are considered almost not even human because they don't fit in to, they aren't even trying to fit into the social credit system, So part of what I'm thinking is that maybe the combinations that this John Doe introduces into the system kind of falls, cuts contrary, It's kind of a countercultural way of sort of using the same power that everyone's been using to really succeed in business, except use it to sort of liberate the masses. That's kind of where I feel like this is going.
Yes.
Unless you have a different idea, Seth.
I mean, not necessarily. Because of the way that it is, I think that most of, let's say, the ill manner that it's being used is, let's say, by simple, I guess you could say, who's in power. It doesn't, it's like the idea, like, okay, so, from a certain understanding, I'm not going to put this across for all of our listeners, but from, I would say, most of our understanding, just because there's one TV pastor that is convincing everybody they need to, plant their seed money for Jesus and send them $1,000, which ultimately we know ends up in them buying a new mansion or a new private jet, doesn't mean that, let's say, everything in the Bible is false or that the message is false.
Right.
It just means that one person is using let's say, the truth of the message that resonates with people to get them to do what he wants. So it's, as far as any of that goes, it's not that the actual text is wrong, but how people would then interpret and use it over other people.
Right. Well, that's always the case. I mean, obviously, Wilbur didn't want to have people enslaved, but what he did do is he created a way that people could harness the power of the universe for business, and people decided to do that for bad.
Yeah,
and there needs to be some breaking up of the fact that maybe he created a system too perfect, and there needs to be some breaking up of that.
So I would say then it would have to look something more like who would have been some of these people?
Okay,
People
like
find
Amazon,
like printing the Bible in English or like the common language.
Exactly.
With the printing press, where then it's like it basically shook the elite, saying, "Oh, but we only wanted these for us to use. Like this wasn't for the masses to understand."
So it's
really not
the
printing
message
or
was
making
bad.
something different or counter. It's just simply bringing out what's actually there.
Yeah. No. But what you have to do is you have to you. It's really difficult to arise from the inside, right? It's really difficult to arise from the inside and create that change. So what needs to happen is the power that the John Doe offers allows the people who aren't in control to have some of that power, which then doesn't, we think at first as the story progresses, that it's going to overthrow the Wilbur stuff. Just like we think in the Wheel of Time that anyone who blows the Horn of Valeri, even if it's a dark friend, the heroes of old will fight for the dark friends. That was never the case.
Mhm.
The power that Wilbur is wielding and wrote down it was always meant for good. Just because people twisted it to evil, it's like that's just kind of how things have to change. So that's what I'm saying, is that right now the world is controlled top down using this model of the Wilbur power, and because of how powerful it is, it's kind of locked everything down. The John Doe power begins to bring in like sort of a giving power to people who are lower on the totem pole, and they can then sort of question the culture and sort of break in and maybe make new cultures.
Yeah. It's I have my picture of Slade's organization is really, he follows the will of Will. I mean, he runs a slick operation and he organizes according to the way. He's a very conservative element. He's just making use of needs and wants and things that people exhibit and search for on kind of the fringes of the system.
Right.
And he's kind of like the dark underbelly, and those people in control kind of want that element to still be part of the thing. They just don't want to have it spoken of at parties.
Yeah, I keep thinking of Gus Fring from the Breaking Bad series.
Oh,
like
yeah.
This, just like he's nice. He has his business. Everything is good. I mean, he's selling meth for the cartel.
Yeah.
But he's like a nice guy.
I'm sure the parents of Johnny, who's working for him, for some extra money when he's in school, they think he's wonderful. He's a good influence. He's helping Johnny get more disciplined.
Yeah.
And
do you understand what I'm saying, Seth? So we're not trying to say that it's wrong. It's just people in power have taken control of it, and it needs to be arrested away from them. And the only way for that to happen is for the power to come from somewhere else as well.
Right. So then how can we get this resolved to help the quartet And the trafficking ring against our villain, Slade.
Right. So I think in one way, the unique, so there's like Tess, who runs and owns this battered woman shelter, right? Rocco is her immediate sort of contact, right? He's a beat cop. He works around that area. He patrols by it more and more now that he knows what's going on. And he is kind of, and he'll never make a detective. He understands that, but he does know Albert, or and maybe Tess knows Albert. Then maybe they went to college together, and they're able to get connected together, and then they're kind of ramping up a private investigation against Slade's organization, maybe as like some kind of Super Bowl, some kind of big event is coming. So like everyone in the underbelly knows that the drug use, the trafficking goes up, the prostitution goes up, all of that stuff increases, and Slade is, this is going to be a big payoff, a big, he's got lots of nefarious things lined up, and at this same time, the John Doe is getting more and more unstable. And so Bernard is kind of, there's like all these elements as they lead up to maybe it'll be like a rescue. The end result will be like a rescue of a shipping container full of trafficked people, or Rome wasn't built in a day, but it did burn in one.
Yeah.
So it's like
it crumbled over a few centuries, but to set it up.
Yeah. Part of me doesn't like the idea of having everything get resolved in like a single night of action.
Right.
That's typically not how things in the real world work.
Uh-huh.
But there's also the fact that we have a book that you can speak magic words and things happen. So we could go the route of saying that the whole government kind of gets overturned, or we can go the route of saying that Rocco, Albert, and Tess, with Bernard's help and with the John Doe's help, get something really great accomplished, but then they're kind of feeling a little bit defeated, and then maybe they get sort of visited by a couple of high-ranking people in the party who then kind of let their mask down and say, hey, we've been fighting for a while, and we notice what you're doing here, and I just want you to know that you've got air support, basically.
I think I need to bring in my wild card.
Okay,
I've been just laughing this whole time because what I had written down for what I wrote down for the wild card was the Reformation.
The Reformation?
The Reformation. Yeah, like the 95 Theses. Okay, so what happens is it gets pushed too far and gets pushed too far out of whack. And finally, like Luther said, this deal with the indulgences, just because they're rich, they can like buy off their time in purgatory. I mean, that's ridiculous, and what was this? What is this all really about after all? And he nailed up on the door, the 95 Theses. Well, this is kind of like the notepad. This is John Doe. This is like, what? This really is the key to the universe, but it's gotten all just boxed in.
Right.
And it's been under the thumb of just, people who want to use it for control.
Right. So is this something that like maybe Bernard writes?
Well, I think that's kind of where I felt like my whole deal was a little superfluous, because Tess was clearly from Goss stock. She was good, acceptable, honorable.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she, first had a roommate in college who came from kind of a, kind of risen in the world, but kind of from tougher circumstances, who had a sister who got caught up in drugs. And then she kind of fell into, dealing with this see me kind of underbelly thing.
Yeah.
And then, when one of Slade's prime producers, breaks camp, so to speak, to save her daughter from getting sucked into what she has been in.
Yeah.
It's like, he's going to scurry to use his methods to shut this all up.
Right.
And it turns out that, he's got something on Albert's parents. And they had this like epiphany moment that you just described. Like, you know what? So what if our reputation is ruined? I'm not going along with this.
Yeah.
Our son is doing something really good, and I'm really proud of him. And yeah, whatever, expose us, do whatever you have to do. I'm just not playing along. I'm not going to play the phony baloney game, and you don't have power over me anymore. And that kind of flushes Slade's toilet a little bit. But that's just the microcosm down at the basic a few individual things. But it starts pulling at threads that begin to unravel. So I mean, I just want to hand it like right back to where you were going, with, hey, wait, this is really about something real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ta-da!
That's really good.
Anyway, I had to just laugh because that's what I wrote down, is that we got to have a reformation here.
Yeah, part of me's thinking that maybe, like Bernard should, because he is a descendant of Will.
Yeah.
Maybe he should sort of use the information he's gathered from the John Doe and kind of write a combination, like an open your eyes combination.
Right.
And it's just like a phrase, or it's like a pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. It's like, what do you do when you hear that? You look at the curtain and you look at behind to see what's behind it.
Yes.
It's a thing like that you can be put up on doors and windows and sent out through text messages, and it basically just kind of
vote for Pedro.
Yeah, basically, yeah. It basically just gives everyone a chance to open their eyes.
Right.
It's like, hey, here's a chance, open your eyes and see what's going on. And that alone causes so much disaster, because so many people are so used to just kind of living in the operational, the normal everyday life. Like, this is just how it works. This is just what we do. This is just what my life is.
Here's an idea to, let's say, wrap the end up with an idea of the Reformation. So we have, I think eventually either the John Doe like completes a bunch of codes and keys. It's in that Stella notebook. They've got Bernard's got a bunch of stuff written down. He has a bunch of the codes and keys now. His connection with the quartet members. They take down Slade and some of this ring, which then also takes down some higher officials.
Absolutely,
which causes some upheaval, let's say, to people's belief structure. Or like, wow, like I never would have thought that, all, like, let's say all these gauze get taken down in, like, they were doing this. And so people are starting to, like, say, get shaken up a little bit. And then, and kind of like you've got Bernard, who's got all the keys to it. And he kind of is, let's say, putting out this information that is slowly, let's say, slow dripping actual information out of Will's work. That doesn't exactly conform with where everybody else is taking it. Doesn't mean that what everybody else is using is like unusable, but it starts putting a different light on it, almost like hey, here's 95 things that might be a little bit different than what everybody thinks. However, then as they keep cracking down on these different rings with different reports and things on different official levels, you've got Albert and Rocco kind of able to kind of file reports and, let's say, on an official level, not like in a bad way start tweaking or changing, but it's like they're exposing like the corruption on this side. Well, an alternate view is being kind of filtered through partly the homeless and then the different shelters, and then you've got Tess, let's say, bringing in different ideas of like help and what would that be? Not necessarily therapy, but kind of therapy. Help recenter,
like
recovery for all of, let's say, these victims coming through her thing. That then is like, it's like this slow, like trickling in other information that then is helping people break free from the corrupt overlording of this side, which is being exposed by these people, and their connections with here brings out, this information on the other side, which then is trickled through then like the thought process. So it's going to take a while, and it started, but now through their process of, let's say, saving all these people, they funnel them through these channels who are then given these bits of information as then they go back out into society, now being given this other information that then says, oh, this, you can't have a hold on me because that's, not how it is. That's,
Right.
not just like that's a wrong interpretation, but, they've now, and maybe not all at once, but little parts and little parts, so that then now individual people are going to start putting little bits together. And as they've been, let's say, freed, and they've been trickled this little information, then you have Bernard that's, let's say, kind of on a back burner, putting out like all this other stuff, or maybe he's channeling, or maybe he's started up something that's like taken, and he's all of a sudden taken the scene like I don't know, like a Nikola Tesla or like a Elon Musk, who's like all of a sudden started breaking forth with all these ideas, and no one knows where they're coming from.
Right. Right.
And, coming up with, like endless energy batteries and, like all this stuff. And then he uses that to help fund, let's say, the recovery centers and the kind of, I guess you could say, re-education. But as far as re-education, not like in you're going to go to the re-education camp.
Yeah. Actually, just education.
Right.
Education facilities. Not re-education, because most people aren't educated.
Yeah. You mean like some place where they can say out loud words mean things, and there might be an objective reality, and good and honorable and acceptable actually have to do with real character attributes, and not
your place in society.
not meaning conforming to what the current crop of rulers say.
Yeah.
I've been thinking these last few minutes, one of my favorite lines of any of the, you look at the Star Wars world, and what I always call episode 3.9, which was one of my favorites, the Rogue One movie. And it's just this act of desperation. Well, we're just going to have to go there, and we're going to have to get the information. We're going to have to find a way to upload it. Yeah, but it'll be impossible. Well, hopefully we can get through. Well, you can't base a plan on hope. And then the girl says, rebellions are built on hope, aren't they? And I always like that.
Yeah. Is that it? Did we just do the end?
I think so. And I think it went full circle, where this story is kind of Star Wars-ish at the beginning.
Yeah, it is kind of Star Wars-ish. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Star Wars. No, this episode of Wait, It Gets Better. If you liked this episode, if you thought this was a great cap to a good 3-part series, let me know at waititgetsbettercast@gmail.com. If you thought this episode needed more help, like we needed to come up with better ideas, we needed to work on our flow a little bit better, I would say just wait. It gets better.